exceptional opportunities. When I think back at the days when I came to Michigan State, we were clearly given opportunities. This was back in the 60s. In my years, 65, 66, 60, we won 4 national titles. Football, soccer, wrestling, and hockey. That's unparalleled in any university. But we were given exceptional opportunities. And the reasons for success are always the same. It's hard work, it's dedication, it's perseverance, overcoming obstacles.
I really didn't know much about college at the time. I did know that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State were the big schools in the country, and they were recruiting me, and they're going to give me a full ride. I got recruited by Michigan State also, and Michigan. I really liked both of those schools. Cliff Keen at Michigan was a great guy. Grady Penninger was a super coach at Michigan State. So I put my application in at all of them. My grades were okay. For a guy that spent 3 or 4 hours in the gym every day, they were reasonable grades, but I was prepared enough to go to college. I decided on going to Oklahoma State. I signed up to be a Cowboy. That's where I was going. Along about August, I got a notice from the registrar from Oklahoma State saying I'd been rejected. Now my grades were fine. I called down there. They said, nope, you've been rejected. I tried to talk to the coach. He was out of town. He was in Europe on a cultural exchange. I got scared. I called up Michigan State because I liked that school too. And Grady Penninger said, come on up, sign some papers, you can come to school here. So that's what I did. Dale Anderson had a very unique story, very similar to mine. He came to Michigan State, you could say by mistake, or he went to Iowa State by mistake, but he was a state champion in wrestling and tennis from the state of Iowa. He was from Waterloo High School. He went to Iowa State on a full ride. He went first semester. He got to second semester registration. And at that time, when you went through registration, you had to pick up your cards at one station and then go through the process. Well, he got there, and when it came time to pay, there's supposed to be a payroll card there coming from the scholarship office. There wasn't one there. So he owed all this money. Well, where's his scholarship? And the coach just said, you know, oh, I don't know, I will take care of that later, or something like that. Anderson got all upset and quit. Calls up Michigan State, and Grady says, sure, come on here, but we can't give you any money. You'll have to sit out a whole year before you can get a scholarship. So he comes to Michigan State in the middle of my sophomore year. He's not the only one, though, that came that way. Dale Carr graduated at mid-semester from Granby High School in Virginia Beach. He talks a friend of his who was a state champion also from Granby, who was going to Pitt. He talks George Radman, our 167-pounder, transferring from Pittsburgh to Michigan State.
And so go out, they visit Oklahoma. It's a very impressive, nice school. There were a couple of things I didn't care for. One, they had athletic dorms, which meant you were going to be 24/7 with other athletes. Plus was they had a good training table, so the food you ate was going to be superior to dormitory food. They also believed in running, and I had bad knees, and I was not a runner. And then I got a letter from Coach Penninger about Michigan State. And I thought, well, our coach went there. I know he's got a good reputation, you know. They won the Big Ten a couple of years before. I hadn't really kept up on him, see what they were doing. But I went to the school and was really impressed. The coach said, earlier in an interview I heard, he said, "I never lied to a recruit." He's 100% right. Never, ever told me a lie. Now, he didn't tell me everything, though. Somehow he neglected to mention that that year they finished 10th in the Big Ten and scored 1 point. That summer, because I had qualified to go to Olympic tryouts, I got to go to this Olympic training camp in Pennsylvania. And actually Don was there too. And after the training camp, I was supposed to ride home back to Virginia with Gray Simons, who was going to be the new coach at Lock Haven. And he knew I was committed to Michigan State and wasn't putting any pressure on me, but he takes me to Lock Haven to see the school. Well, I'm just overwhelmed. I'm going home. I get home on Sunday. Monday morning, I'm supposed to get on a plane to come to my summer orientation clinic at Michigan State. I told my mother, I'm going to Lock Haven. And she says, "No, you're not." She said, "Didn't you sign a paper?" I said, "Yeah, I did." She said, "What's your word worth?" So my mother shamed me into going to Michigan State. Best thing she ever did.
My brother was at Michigan State, and because I did not wrestle my senior year in high school, I wanted to complete that desire to wrestle. And my brother was on the wrestling team and indicated that they had just recruited Doug Blueball, that they were rebuilding the team and there might be an opportunity to make the team. I was just an unrecruited walk-on at Michigan State. I was intimidated. I mean, here I was with an Olympic champion and with a Big Ten wrestling coach. So I paid attention, crossed my T's, dotted my I's, and did exactly what they said.
I considered Eastern Michigan. That was my hometown school. I visited Western Michigan. Coach Nichols, who wrestled for Cliff Keen back in the day from Iowa State, came out and recruited me. And I also had some interest from Arizona University. But none of these schools were offering me aid. It was, get a job, come on out and be a student athlete, try to make the team and see what happens. And then one afternoon, I got a call from Charles Beatty, and he said, "Mike," he says, "I just talked to Coach Penninger at Michigan State, and I gave him your number, and he's going to call you." And sure enough, and I can remember exactly what he said. He said, "Mike, this is Grady Penninger, Michigan State." He said, "I have aid." He offered, aid to me, a scholarship, a grant and aid. And I think about something my grandma told me, you don't look a gift horse in the mouth. But I said, "Coach, I want to play football." And so Grady, he didn't hesitate. He said, "Okay." So that was the deal. And then the experience started.
I came to wrestle at Michigan State because I was destined to do so. My earliest memories of my childhood, growing up with my mom, dad, and brother, were on MSU's campus. My dad, after World War II, got a job as a campus police officer, a uniformed officer. His dad would get us in the hockey games and football games because he was a police officer. He'd show his badge and we'd go in, and so I've always been a part of Michigan State. And when it came to going to college, after I won my state championship, there was no other thought except, boy, I hope I can make the team someday.
The big names of the group, well, our biggest name was our biggest player, Jeff Richardson. And he's part of the football team that were national champions in '65 and '66. He's best friends with Bubba Smith, Clinton Jones, Charlie Thornhill, Gene Washington, all of these All-Americans. So he was just another one of the boys. Actually, I meant one of the brothers, because that's how they referred to themselves, as the brothers. He was a state champion as a junior, took second in the state as a senior, and he's recruited by Michigan State. Well, back in those days, African American students weren't recruited by very many universities. He'd been recruited by several schools, but he comes to Michigan State on a visit, just fell in love with the place. He comes to school here. Grady Penninger never knew he was here until he walked into the office, and here he is, one of the best wrestlers in the country at heavyweight. Grady never knew he was coming. So that was an amazing, amazing thing. Each one of us brought different things to the team. For myself, my goal was set back when I was a 9th grader. I wanted to be the best in the world. I'd met this Olympic champion, Terry McCann, back in Illinois, working out at Northwestern. I met him, and he was talking about how cool it was to be an Olympic champion. So I kind of secretly put that in the back of my mind, that that's what I wanted to do.
My dream had always been just to make the team. That was my goal. And then when I placed 3rd in the Big Ten as a sophomore, I thought, my goal is now to be a Big Ten champion. And then after we won the Big Ten title again, I think it was the 2nd or 3rd time in a row, with Michigan taking 2nd, I began to think that, you know what, if things go right, we could make history and be the first Big Ten team to win an NCAA wrestling championship.
What I walked into at Michigan State were some pretty terrific recruits from Pennsylvania, from Virginia, from Illinois, from Michigan itself. And that combination was pretty evident in terms of how it played out, of taking Michigan State from the bottom of the Big Ten forward pretty quickly, just with that class of students.
And we had a good team. You know, I mean, Grady recruited good wrestlers. We were solid up and down the lineup, and we were working hard, and we had Doug Blueball in there, and we had each other.
One thing about the Michigan State team was the benefit of having really good workout partners. And I think we didn't always work out with the same person. We'd work out weight classes up and down. And I think as a result of that, we were able to take the best of the best and really benefit from each other. So good workout partners, different skill sets, some of the things you were able to use, others you learned how to defend yourself against. So you had some great outstate recruiting and some great in-state recruiting that kind of meshed in terms of where weight classes fit and who ultimately came together to make that team.
But I don't remember any discussions about team leadership or team goals that we should have. We just all came to wrestling. I really liked Grady Penninger when I met him, and he was a funny person. He liked to tell jokes. He liked to pull tricks on people all the time. He was a really good organizer. Practices were always organized and structured, and we got everything done. And he knew I was training hard and I was in shape. And he used to come to me in practice and say, are you tired yet? And if I'd tell him yes, well, he'd call practice off. If I told him I wasn't tired yet, we'd go longer. And that was just between Grady and I.
Coach Penninger was from Ponca City, Oklahoma, and he just had a little drawl, and some of the terminologies he would use, I'd never heard them before, you know. Like when we would be working out, all of a sudden he'd say, okay, come on now, let's jiggle. And I didn't know what he was talking about, but that meant you bounced up and down and tried to stay loose, you know. And sometimes he said, okay, we're going to go huckety-buck and bippity-bam. And that meant we were going to go hard. So that was kind of cool.
Grady ran a very tough practice, and I was bound and determined not to let him see me stop. So there was a lot of making sure that we were there on time. The drills were things that I needed because I did not have great coaching in high school. So I was there to learn and to figure out how I could make the team.
He had a sense of humor in the things he said. Like, that guy's tougher than a possum roadkill. And like Mike said, huckle-dee-buck was one of his things. And Mike talked about the jiggle. Grady called it the Mexican standoff, where you would kind of dance in front of your opponent if you got tired or if you needed to take a break during the competition. And it wasn't until after I graduated I realized that it wasn't really a Mexican standoff after having wrestled OU and O State. It was the Oklahoma State standoff is what it was.
He knew his stuff. He knew how to coach. He, I think, knew the limits that he could push people. He knew where Doug could be helpful, and he learned how to match us up as workout partners in the room so that we were able to continue to help each other as well as learn to progress.
I never could not believe in hard work. I tried to make them something they'd remember when they were showering. The assistant coach we had at Michigan State, Doug Blubaugh, was a key factor in what we did. I don't believe that we would have ever achieved what we did had it not been for Doug Blubaugh. He was an inspiration to all of us. And it wasn't because he said something. It was because he did something. He could work out with those guys from 160 pounds right up through every weight class, right up to heavyweight, whip every one of them, and come back down the line and do it again and again. He could stay there all day and work out with you, all day. He was too big for me, but he was the inspiration, he was the motivation in a real subtle way. It was interesting how Doug came to Michigan State. At first he was a gold medal winner in the Rome Olympics. He comes home, he went to Oklahoma for a year, and then he was recruited by Michigan. Cliff Keen recruited him to be assistant coach at U of M. So we went there. Michigan State hires Grady to be head coach. Well, now you've got the assistant coach at Michigan who knows the head coach at Michigan State, and Doug really liked Grady, and Grady really wanted to recruit Doug, but there had to be something else in the mix for Doug because Doug was a very loyal person. He wasn't going to give up that loyalty. Well, Dr. Hanna, president of the university, put in an extra thing for Doug. Hanna owned a farm, 250 acres, beef cattle, and corn and wheat. Doug was to be the farm manager. It was through that really sealed the deal for Doug to come to Michigan State. An unknown fact, though, was that Doug really talked to Cliff Keen about it, and they discussed it. And Cliff Keen let him go with blessing. You know, possibly the introduction of Blubaugh as an addition to the coach, they couldn't do anything but help.
He was a hard worker, and when we got into practice from him, he was right there with you. He was teaching you. He'd work out with you, and he'd encourage you. And he was an excellent technician, and he was just an all-around super person. I mean, he's the kind of person that, you know, when you're having a rough time or in a slump, or maybe you've lost a tough match, you know, he'd have you over to his house, you know, for chicken fried steak, you know, and play with his his twins, and I can't say enough about him. I love that man. He was great.
Doug was the guy that always came to visit us in the dorms. He was, Grady was the general, Doug was, you know, the captain, but he was our friend as well, and wasn't the disciplinarian. He just wanted to know how we were doing on a personal level and if our studies were going okay, and took a real interest in us, not just as wrestlers or athletes, but as people.
Actually, Grady was really good with the tactics and strategy, and he was the administrator, but I didn't work out with Grady. Grady taught me things, he showed me things, but Doug was actually hands-on. You get out there and you go bippity-bam with him and that type of stuff.
Doug was the real key behind the whole thing. Now, Doug couldn't have done it without Grady, and Grady couldn't have done it without Doug. And ask anybody on those teams and they'll all say the same thing. You know, he's not an unsung hero because we all sing his praises, but it was Doug in combination with Grady that made those teams great. I loved our competition. When we had meets with other schools, once we became to really dominate people, and I really enjoyed it. And our teammates, we didn't really have competition between each other to see, you know, what he did versus what I did. Everybody just went out there and did their job. I mean, I could count on Anderson going out there and, you know, getting all intense and getting all fired up and, you know, whooping somebody badly, and he did. He was great to watch. Or Dale Carr, he's going to hit that Granby roll. Here it comes. Boom. Got it. Or George Radman going out there against his opponent and just making the guy look foolish. In the finals of the Nationals our senior year, he did the same move on the guy 4 times in a row. The same exact move set up the same exact way. We had some memorable meets my senior year where we went to Oklahoma, and that was the first time any team had ever gone through Oklahoma and not been defeated. Nobody had ever hit them both. And that was back-to-back, Friday night, Saturday night. So we rose to those occasions because we were a bunch of really, really strong individuals, and everybody wrestled well.
And we're going to wrestle the defending national champions and the defending national runners-up back-to-back, Friday night and Saturday night. And I was scared to death. I mean, I wrestled that first match. I don't think I took more than 2 breaths in the whole 8 minutes. And I lost it. I don't think I should have. And I lost the next night.
We took a trip down to Oklahoma, okay? And in that trip, we wrestled Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. And we beat Oklahoma, and I believe we tied with Oklahoma State. And I guess that was quite an accomplishment, because usually when you go down there, you're going to get whipped. And we didn't.
Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, wrestling's a very big deal. And the fans were right down to the edge of the mat. The place is going crazy, and I'd never been in that situation before. I mean, it was like, it was nuts. These people, you didn't dare go off the edge of the mat because somebody'd kick you. You know, it was like, this is crazy. What are these people doing?
And it was intense. I mean, we get ready to go into the match. We go down the tunnel into the arena that had like 6,000 or 7,000 people there. I mean, I got goosebumps and my hair standing on end, and I'm the first one out, right? And the kids were lining the tunnel and they were yelling at us, "You guys are going to lose. You're going to get beat to death." And I was scared. I mean, I must have been white as a ghost. And it was, Grady told us before we went out of the locker room, "It's going to be a snake pit, boys. You're going to have to go out there and fight. It's going to be like being in a snake pit." And it was. But we came out okay.
I think the guy I wrestled from Oklahoma was about 6 foot tall, and I'm about 5'4". So he's a great big tall guy, and I can remember lowering my stance even more so that he had to come down to wrestle me, which once he bent over so far he couldn't move at all, and I just go in there and fireman's carry and put him on his back, and I just destroyed him. You know, it wasn't that big a deal because I was using the mental and physical game on him. I wrestled, and then the next guy wrestled, and he did what he was supposed to do, and we all did our job.
I remember our main guys, all of them came through. Richardson, Bradley, Carr, Anderson, Beam. I mean, these guys made history because it was the first time in Division I wrestling that any school had gone into Oklahoma and wrestled OU and O State and come out without a loss. That was a record.
Well, one of our biggest rivalries was Michigan, and I'm sad to say that we never beat Michigan in a dual meet all the years I was there.
Frankly, the size of the crowds with a Michigan match, they filled the stands. There were a lot of matches where, you know, we had Minnesota coming in or some of the other schools, and it got a little sparse, but we had to move the match because of the size of the crowds coming from Ann Arbor and East Lansing. Very exciting, just, you could feel it.
I don't know if Grady or Doug ever talked about us losing and how we needed to focus better or whatever it was. The kind of athletes we had on the team, you didn't need to tell them anything. Anderson didn't need to be told. Carr didn't need to be told. Radman, Mike Bradley, Richardson, we all knew. And Grady and Doug weren't the kind of coaches that if we performed well, they didn't come back and really push us hard the next week. We just worked on our mistakes and get ready for the next one. Our national championship run really began the year before when we won the Big Ten, and we sent several to the national tournament. When we came back that following year, so it would be my senior year, I was ready to really put out and get a national championship for myself. And each one on the team kind of had that individual goal. Anderson wanted to be a national champion. Carr wanted to be a national champion. Bradley, Radman, we all did. So each person, we all put out our individual efforts, and at the end of the day, you tied up the score, and there it was. We had won. Now, we got some breaks along the way. Oklahoma didn't perform as well as they could. Oklahoma State didn't either. The team that was really up there with us was Michigan.
I'm thinking, yeah, we could be top 4 with George and Don and Dale Anderson. We contribute some. But to win it was unbelievable.
If I had to point to one key, it would have been Blue Ball. Because for Blue Ball to work out, he worked out with everybody from 160 through heavyweight. George Radman was national champion at 67. Mike Bradley was second in the nation at 77. Jack Zindel was an All-American at 91. Jeff Richardson was All-American at heavyweight. Those are all Blue Ball's workout partners. Interestingly enough, on several of those guys, Bradley, Zindel, and Richardson were all 3 on 2 national championship teams, football and wrestling. There's only 4 athletes that have ever done that at Michigan State, have double championship rings. So those guys did it. That national championship team had 7 All-Americans, and that's pretty tough to do. 2 national champions and 7 All-Americans.
Yeah, we were at Kent State, and that's where the tournament was being held that time. And we were counting up. I remember Doug and I were over in the corner counting up what if, and finally all the ifs came together, and it was the first time that a Big Ten school had won the nationals, and it was just a shocker that, you know, things that you had dreamed about all of your life, and I had such dreams myself as a coach, and the kids did too.
Every team I ever wrestled on was a winning team, you know. It was like the height of it, though. I mean, winning a state championship and being on a national championship team, it was, I don't know, it was probably beyond words. Though it's one of my, probably up to that point in my life, it actually eclipsed any personal victories I'd had, you know, being a multi-state champion and winning the Big Ten twice and things like that. But that was actually eclipsed that. It seemed to be bigger than, you know, some of its parts.
So Coach and I talked about it, and I talked with Doug Blueball about it, and I was close enough to 115 that they thought it would be give us a better chance of scoring points at the NCAA if I went down a weight, so I did. And I won my first match against a really good guy from Southern Illinois and lost to a guy in the next round. But the actual tournament itself was like a dream. You know, I was living it, I was there, I was cheering for my teammates and watching them win and watching the points go up and seeing us on the leaderboard, and I'm going, oh, wow, I can't believe this is happening.
We knew we had it won at the end of the semifinal round. Okay, that's pretty good. And you know, it was cool, but you know, you still have business to take care of. And we had Don was in the finals. You know, I was in the finals. George Radman was in the finals. Anderson was in the finals. Jeff Richardson was, you know, he had to go up against his old foe Dave Porter, you know, for third place. Jack Zindel was in there and took third place. So we were scoring points. You know, as far as that's something maybe, you know, I did later in life. You know, you reflect back on it. But at that time, we were there to take care of business. And
Michigan was out of the contest. They were second. They couldn't catch us. Oklahoma's down there, I don't know, 12, 15 points below us. They couldn't catch us. So it was like going, oh, hey, yeah, hey, look, we won. So Grady, there's a picture of Grady and Doug, you know, looking up at the scoreboard, and they got a pencil out there, and they're trying to figure this thing out. You know, like, have we won it? Can we come back? Are there any mistakes? So the next day, we're in the finals, and there's been two times in my career when I lost a match by not being totally focused, and that was one of them. Because I can remember Grady coming up to me and says, well, Don, just go out there and have fun. Well, having fun is winning. And I took second. Inside, I'm really upset. I'm happy for the team. I'm happy for all the guys that won. Anderson did a great job in the finals. Radman was spectacular. Bradley got beat by a really good opponent. You know, we performed well. Everyone was necessary for that victory, and it was a really cool thing to do. And as we talk about it, teammates talk about it years later, it becomes bigger and bigger the farther we get away from it.
For me, I didn't really appreciate that Michigan State was the first school to win a national championship in wrestling. That kind of came after, and you know, 50 years later, we're looking back and saying, wow, that was pretty special. That was different. And now that we have a chance to maybe document it and remind people of both what happened and what we did. Hopefully there's lessons in there for the current Michigan State program and wrestlers and other programs that are looking to say, we don't have to stay at the bottom. We can get to the top with the right combination of talent and coaching and how it all comes together. A little bit of luck in there too.
There's a lot of people that put a lot of discussion into when the tide turned from only the Big Eight, from only Oklahoma back in the 60s. And Michigan State, our rivalry, brought that to the forefront with our placing first and second in the nation. What happened to the other teams? This was the portent of what was going to happen in wrestling around the country. There's a lot of things that went into this, but it was clearly a changing of the times. There's more wrestlers, better wrestlers around the country now. The winning programs produce the best possible coaches. They come from Oklahoma. Finley Collins was the coach for 20, 30 some years. He was from Oklahoma. Cliff Keen from Michigan is from Oklahoma. Grady Pennegar gets recruited to be at Michigan State. He's from Ponca City. His teams won 3 state championships in Oklahoma, Ponca City. Blue Ball was on his team. He had another teammate, Shelby Wilson, was also a gold medalist from Ponca City. Grady coached 3 Olympians that got medals. So the best coaches were there, but now those coaches are going other places. And yes, Oklahoma was the connection. And even though Michigan State won, its coaches were from Oklahoma. So the tide has turned. There's a lot of parity. I mean, yes, Penn State still won it, but Ohio State won it the year before. Minnesota's won it. Arizona State has won it. So people, wrestling has really improved. It's so nice to watch now, but Michigan State was the first one to crack it out of Oklahoma and Iowa. We were first.
I have one fitting piece of advice for you new letter winners, and that is when your competition is over, you take that passion and that effort and that hard work and you take it to a new goal. And you will be successful by doing that, because the reasons for success are always the same. Hard work, dedication, perseverance, overcome the obstacles. Winners find solutions, and losers find excuses. Go Green!